The whole concept of yajna in the old days, every religion had it, a form of sacrificing something in order to make everything well, balanced, harmonious. Now he applies that to our individual life and social life also. So last week we went through some of those topics. Some interesting terms came up, So in connection with yajna and the fruits of it for the welfare of everybody, essentially. Even bringing in concepts, though not specifically mentioned, of ecology. So unless there's some kind of cooperation, yajna in that context, then we'll pollute the seas, we'll chop down the forests, we'll pollute the sky, we'll do all of those kinds of things out of pure self-centeredness, self-interest. No idea of self-sacrifice, no idea of the common good, no idea of acting in terms of the welfare of all beings. That's a very high value that everybody needs to inculcate. So there's been a stress on how does this karma yoga benefit us individually. If you're able to do an action in such a way that you have a cheerful frame of mind, and that although you work hard, still you can do it with a delight, glide across, what we call today hand gliding. See? So you take that, there's the hand, whatever you use it for is a gliding business. One of the great difficulties, and something that is a little heart-wrenching, is that the land where all this wonderful, wonderful material originated is the land that applies it less. Because of over 1,000 years of conquest and so on, still the pattern is a holy man who we should follow is a man who sits and does nothing. So every whole nation will sit and do nothing and be trampled on, be the doormat, the national doormat. And now that a level of political freedom is there, these principles need to be applied. Don't cut your forest down. Don't pollute your rivers, particularly your sacred rivers. Your beautiful Mother Ganga, well, how will you use her? How will you worship her? You put pollution there. So all of these things are deviations from the central message of the Bhagavad Gita, and particularly to do with this concept of yajna. So what should we do? Everything that we do and any gain we get is a kind of prasad, something offered, and we take whatever remains. God takes the subtle portion, we take the gross portion. In that way, any fruits of any activities we're happy to take as sacred food, a sacred offering. If you put it in a Roman Catholic context, communion, whatever it is, you take something. So just briefly, there's some of the things to do with yajna, and you see last week we discussed this mutual cooperation that's necessary, that unless our minds are correct and noble and full and free, then the whole of nature then will also be the same. So in ancient Indian society, they did a most remarkable thing. They took the poorest of the poor and elevated them to the highest status, the Brahmin, the non-earning person, and put the Kshatriya second. The nobility they put second. With the idea that these people have a value in society, the way they think, the way they teach, the way they correct society, the way they live in harmony. Those people will create a harmonious, elevated society. Then in contrast to that, you see is a wonderful term is used, Shakram. He who does not follow on earth this wheel, this interdependency, where a whole of nature is interdependent, what we might even call a butterfly effect. A butterfly flips their wings here, the result is seen and felt on the far side. The far side of what? Far side of everywhere. We have this very small frame of reference, which we call the earth, an earthly existence. But actually it's much more than that. A remarkable discovery in quantum physics is this, that if you have two electrons that engage in some way or another, make a contact, then you separate them at vast distances. You make the change in one, instantaneously the change occurs in the other. So the Bell theorem is called. Well, there are many, many explanations for it. But the most logical explanation is the whole thing is interconnected. Even that as a basic explanation must be there. That if you do this to this and it changes there, nothing travels from here to there, because nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. So everything is interconnected. You can't avoid it. It's like, in the language of the Upanishads, a warp and woof occurring. So this is, we're just reviewing some of the concepts from last time. Then in contrast to that, see, Yastvam Atma Tir Eva. But the man who rejoices, the one who rejoices, Atma Ratihi, in the self, is satisfied with the self and centered in the self. For him truly there's no obligatory duty, there's nothing he has to do. I'll always remember coming into contact with, I've in my life had the privilege of coming into contact with many, many saintly people who guided my life and so on. So the remarkable thing about these people is, still they meditate, still they offer puja and do all these things. They don't have to. There's nothing they have to achieve. They're completely satisfied with the self, completely self-realized, holding on to the body. My grand guru is a man called Swami Shivananda, he's my grand teacher. I may have told you before, but this remarkable man had so much responsibility. Responsible for a worldwide organization, responsible for every aspect of a universally philanthropic work. This great man, in his last years, had a number of curious objects on his bed. And somebody asked him, why do you have all these objects? A coloring book was there, some other thing was there, a few things he could handle, a few books here, things there, a stick. He used to playfully shake the stick at his attendant. Half his side was gone because it was paralyzed. Still he was cheerful. In his 80s. Somebody was bold enough to ask him, why do you have all these things around you? He said, you see, I'm experimenting. Because if I don't have anything to distract my mind will fly off. I'll be of no use to anybody. Mm-hmm. We have it the other way around,
That's right.
isn't it? So we're engaged in all these distractions and quite happy with them. But there's an example, you see, from childhood. See, if the child is happy playing with the toys, the mother will leave it alone. As soon as the child drops the toys and reverts back to the mother comes running to it. Mm. So we have to learn the art of understanding these mere toys are trivia. We may be in love with them at the moment, and that's okay, but at least we have to know there's an ideal. And when things get tough, we have to move toward that. We're forced to move toward it. We may not know it. So the man who rejoices in the self is satisfied with the self, centered in the self. For him, truly, there's nothing he has to do, but still he does it. He, she does it. Why? Because of this generosity of yajna, this generosity of spirit that says, I exist for the good of the world. Why does a man meditate? Not for their own personal gain in that context. They don't do it for themselves. They do it for the world. We were discussing yesterday the great Shankaracharya who sits there in Srinagar. That person is, we trace all our origin back to that, ultimately. So he does, at midnight, every evening, he does a puja. Mm. Why does such a man do a puja? For the welfare of the world. That's the intention behind it. He formulates a sankalpa, the intention of the whole world, all mankind. So a person sits down, even in your own spiritual practice, your meditation, don't think that you're doing something for you. That's no longer meditation. So we can start off a meditation by having an intention, may this be for the good of the whole world. May all beings benefit. You'll find very easily the best way to be happy is make others happy. So for him there's nothing in this world, no object to acquire by doing any action, nor is there any loss by not doing any action, nor has he to depend on anybody for anything. Self-dependent. If an aircraft takes me to South Africa, well and good. If there's an industrial strike, that's okay as well. There'll be another chance.
Mm.
If somebody picks me up at the airport, fine. If not, I'll camp in a corner. So what?
Mm.
These are small things. So, in sound sleep, a man is self-sufficient. There's nothing to seek from any entity. That's what we experience in a deep sleep. No dependence on anything. And that's one of our aspects, one of our states of consciousness that we have to be aware of. It's in the same way. A man is fully realized, a woman is fully realized. Man, woman, that ceases to be anyway at that point. One of the signs of an enlightened man is that he's enjoying boundless bliss within himself or herself. The surface of the ocean seems boisterous, but underneath is great calm, great peace, great silence. Any work done which is noisy, it generally doesn't conform to the principle of karma yoga. It's quiet, silent, steady, concentrated work is the key. That's the key to all productivity. Therefore, it says, tasmat, therefore, ashaktaha, without attachment, saptatam, always, karyam, karma, samachara, always perform. All the actions that should be done have to be done. This is 19. Because performing this action, param, the supreme, apnoti, attains purushaha. The man attains the supreme. Then, we go on a little bit. The supreme example, therefore, from there, so these realized people, Brahmarishis, for example, will be over and above any necessity to do any obligatory action. Nor will they be doing any action for purification, because all karma yoga is designed to purify the mind. Why would we do it? Purify the mind. But a self-realized person doesn't have to do it. Still they do it. And here there's a beautiful example. We highlight an example of the busiest person we can ever think of. So this is Janaka. Janaka is put everywhere as twofold thing. Even though he's a Brahmanyana, even though he has full self-realization, still he engages feverishly in work. Hard work he does. Now in those old days, you have to understand what is a king. So we were discussing yesterday or the other day, a king is extremely busy, like an emperor. In those days, there's no such thing as democracy as such. It's there by implication. If I'm a king, I have to have certain qualities. If I don't have those qualities, somebody else, some rival, will come and knock me off my throne. Hence we have the game of chess. I don't do my job, some other person says, I've heard complaints from your citizens, I think I'll take over your kingdom. You say over my dead body, you say so be it, and then you wage a war. That's how it works. The King Janaka would have been somebody who takes the advice of others, but a full program of activities. What does he have to do? He has to make sure all the citizens are looked after. He has to make sure that the ability to speak to other leaders is there. There's a certain diplomacy must be there. There has to be certain planning for the future. There has to be certain defense plans. There has to be certain expansion plans if you want. So agriculture has to be looked after. Industry and commerce has to be looked after. So many things from dawn to nightfall. A person's intensely busy. In amongst all that busyness, what is the frame of mind? He rises completely above it, doing all those activities purely as yajna. Is it important to have such people for the welfare of the whole world? We gain by it. Absolutely. But in addition, we have an example to follow. that person, having worked incessantly for the welfare of all beings, we should surely do at least a little. Even if we have a little selfishness, self-centered activity, at least the ideal should never be lost. So therefore it says, asking a question really, in answer to an inherent question really, have there ever been people who in the midst of all these taxing activities were absorbed in this self that we call God? And the answer comes. So, it comes like this. Karmanaiva hi samsidam ashtita janaka thaya. Karmana, by action. Then a beautiful, beautiful term that is worth noting. Loka samgraham. Loka samgraha, that means the benefit of the whole world, the protection of all people. Not just my family, not just my friends, not just the people who like me, but regardless, the whole world, the whole of existence. Even we can be more generous than that and say, not just the world we know, but the world we don't know. So even in the Gayatri Mantra, that's how it's put. You don't think about this world, you think about three worlds. This, the heavens, celestial spheres, and the interspace. Those three. So Janaka and others indeed achieved perfection by action. Janaka, Ashvatpati, and so on, people like that, having an eye to the guidance of men. So also should you perform action. All action should be performed in that way. You take these great examples. Then the general principle is there. Yad charati shteshtas. Shteshtaha, the best. Tad eva tarajana. Whatsoever a great man does is followed by others. People go by example he sets. We forget that. So in democracies, some great leader does something that doesn't necessarily set a good moral, ethical example for others. We say it's all right, it's his business. He can do whatever he likes, as long as he runs the country well, as long as he creates jobs, as long as the economy goes well, as long as, if we're under threat, he leads from the front. Never mind about his moral character. Then what will be the example? What will be the fruit of it? Every citizen will say, oh, there's a new moral standard. We'll all do it. There's no harm in it. Then we have all kinds of different, where does our leadership come from? Our parents, primarily. That's the first leadership that we have. The parents must be the supreme example. How do you want to teach children? Do things yourself. You have a shrine at home. Don't insist that children go there. You go there. After a while they'll want to go there. You want to teach them how to be domestic, then you yourself clean the floor. Then others will see that, they say, can I please have a broom? Give me a little one like this. Yes, you go to the toy shop, get a broom. They also, along with you, sweep. Everyone's sweeping. You want to teach a child craft without bothering a child. What are you doing? Oh, I'm knitting this, sewing this. I see. Can I also have that? Yes, yeah, here's some small needles. Try your best. Oh no, you do it like this, not like that. Then they learn and get a joy in it. If you insist and say, you knit, that won't work. You clean the floor, that won't work. You make somebody anti. How do you make somebody anti-religious? Force them to bow down. Right? Indian parents, they actually push the child's head and they touch his feet. No, don't do that. You make the child anti-religious. You want the child to hate me? You remember in a few years' time, oh yes, I remember him. All I remember, my head was pushed down. I didn't like it. So make the example. Do the example.
That's basically lead by example, basically.
Lead by example.
Yeah.
If you want to be a political leader, national leader, example is foremost. You must be a person of pure character. That is why in England, no matter what the Irish think and so on and so forth, still they have a favourable view because she came to visit the Queen of England. She to all intents and purposes, leads an exemplary life, everybody likes her, she works hard, and so on and so forth, all of that, then every citizen will be inspired by it. You see, there was a story, once upon a time, there was a patient was brought, a small child was taken to the doctor. The doctor had examined the sickly child and said, bring him back tomorrow. Came back tomorrow. Then he said, here's what you need to do for this child. Please do not give this child any sweet things. The parent said, could you not have told me that yesterday? You dragged me all the way back to tell me that. He said, no. You see, yesterday I had sweets on the shelf. Today I removed them. If I had said to you yesterday, don't have any sweets, everyone would have respected, he doesn't follow that. So I had to wait for a day. That's the whole idea, right? Now, then the whole thing comes back, that's Janaka and other leaders and so on and so forth, but what about Krishna himself? So then the answer comes like this. Na me parta asti kartavyam trishu lokesha kimchana na navaptam avaptyapya varta eva chakarmani. See, two things, anavaptam, unattained, and avaptavam, to be attained. There's nothing in the three worlds, in the whole of existence, that has not been done by me, nor anything unattained that might be attained. Still I engage in action, because if God stops the continuing creation, we put it in that way, then what will happen? The heart will stop. Supposing God says we withdraw time and space, then nothing exists. We can't observe any movement, we can't observe any objects, all space being taken away. We can only observe objects in space. We can only observe movement in time. And he says, let's stop the sun from spinning, let's stop the hydrogen, let's stop the principle of falling gravity, stop the principle of inertia. Inertia has to be there. A thing won't move by itself. We have to push it against inertia. See? Isn't it? A man is sleeping. Inertia. You have to push him, prod him, then he wakes up. A car stands there. Just by commanding it, please go, it will go. It doesn't have a mind of its own. We have to start an engine and give the momentum to the wheels, and it goes. If he withdraws all these laws, all this harmony, all this rhythm, what will happen? So that is saying. Then we go then to the next one. Continuing the same theme for the next two shlokas. Yadi hyaham na vartiyam jatu karmani atrita mamma vartama nu vartante manusyaha partha sarvasaha. If I ever indeed engage, surely engage, vartiyam, in action. If ever that happens, jatu, karmani, in action, atandritaha, unwearied, I work relentlessly. If I didn't do that, then in every respect, other people will follow my path. Even if God doesn't incarnate in a special way, we'll find that later on, how that works. Yada, yada, hi karmasya, and so on. From age to age. So even if God doesn't express himself, herself, in a special incarnation to uplift the world, there'll be no example for us. The supreme example are these great souls, these great incarnations who come, with only one intention. Not for self-purification, not for advance, but simply for everybody else, the good of the entire world. Simply being pure, pure love. Then the final one from this same theme, Utsiteva ime loka na karyam karma chidaham sankarasya cha karta sham upahanyam ima prajaha. These worlds would perish, would perish if I did not do any action, I should be the cause of confusion of species, and I should destroy those beings. Confusion of species, confusion of castes, social orders, social structures, all that would go. There's no model, no ethics, no morals, nothing to model anything around. Then we move on. A question could arise. Are all beings therefore harnessed to action? No, it's not so. Distinctions reveal themselves in this next one, because two terms come: those who are enlightened, those who are unenlightened. Those who are attached and those who are not attached. Two classifications of beings being there. So it goes. Shakta karmanye avidam tamso yatha kurvanti bharata karyadvidvam sattata shakshas shikersur loka samgraham. There's again the same term. Loka samgraham. A very beautiful, beautiful term. As the unenlightened act from attachment to action, O Bharata, so should the enlightened act without attachment, desirous of the guidance of the multitude. The difference between man and man is not the is in the sort of desire that is harbored. It's not in the action. Everybody does the same action. And later on we'll find that all action is not from us. And that's where we come to the theme, really, that we advertised. Then finally, this whole idea, you see, out of compassion for the ignorant, out of compassion for the poor and the deprived, or out of compassion for the lesser, with compassionate people reaching down, lifting others up, going to that level. So that's why the next stanza goes like this. It says, Na bhuti pedham. Beautiful. Not the unsettled ones, don't unsettle other people's minds. The bhuti bedham, unsettlement in the minds. Na bhuti bedham janayet ajnanam karma sangininam. Yoshayet sarva karmani vidvan yuktaha samacharan. Let not the wise man unsettle the mind of the ignorant people, even where they are. You'll create confusion. Tell people about, these are all the principles of, these are the tanmatras, this is how they bifurcate here and there, and so on and so forth, all of these technical things. The person says, well, all I want is a happy life. Can you tell me about that? No, you have to study something. See, that's the example of the man. I don't know if I gave you it before, but anyway, if I did, I'll give it to you again. I'll tell it as a once upon a time. Once upon a time, there was a man whose job was to ferry people on a boat, and a great, great scholar got on the boat. He looked at this poor man, assessing quite accurately this man was an unlearned man. He said, sir, after a while, enjoying the ride, puffing on his pipe, sir, he said, do you know anything about history and geography? Have you read all the great textbooks? No, sir, I haven't. Then a quarter of your life is gone if you don't know where you come from, if you don't know the historical inheritance of your ancestors and so on and so forth. What value is there? I'm afraid a quarter of your life is gone. As they travel further, the Pandit then asked again, says, sir, do you know science? Do you know how the planets revolve? Do you know the laws of physics? He says, no, I know nothing of that. Then half your life is gone. It's important to know these things. Where does life come from? How does it originate? How is it sustained? And so on and so forth. Half your life is gone. After a while, again he asked, have you read the Vedas and all the scriptures? No, sir, I haven't. Because then 3/4 of your life is gone. Then as they went along, the sea got a little stormy. Mm-hmm. And the Pandit's face grew a little pale. And the boatman said, sir, do you know swimming? No. Then your whole life is gone. So let not the wise man unsettle the mind of the ignorant people attached to karma. By doing persistently and precisely, let the wise induce the others in all activities. Test of a good teacher, reach down, lift the other person up. Go down to the person's level and bring them up. This is the mark of a great teacher. What is the cause of attachment then, which is so deep-rooted? So when he circulated the advert about the journey of the Gita today, one of the subjects was, how can we root out the ego? So it's a very, very important text. Yeah. And some of the principles have been previously told, we'll tell them again. You have to understand that nature, before its expression, stood in harmony. And we have these three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas, all standing in harmony. Because they're in equilibrium, nothing is happening. Once that equilibrium is upset a little bit, then we have the beginnings of the universe. Once it's expanded, we have increasing dimensions of the universe till we get to where we are. So these three gunas, the idea of these ancient scientists, Sankhya scientists, now adopted well throughout the whole of the Vedic tradition. They discovered these things. It's like in modern science, you're trying to discover what are the three forces. Gravity is a force. See? Weak and strong forces is another kind of force. Electromagnetic field is another force. So three fields are like that, corresponding to these three gunas. It shows the insight that the ancient scientists had in those days, still applicable today, just in different language. When that equilibrium is upset, then we get what we have here today, and we declare this is our world, and we have to discover it through physics and science and what have you. Now that applies to every aspect, physical, psychological, every aspect. It comes under this heading of nature, Prakriti. Therefore, if you want to control that, you have to assert and understand, I don't have the freedom, I don't have any freedom of my own. We think we have a certain freedom. It's like a calf being tied to a pole. It thinks it has some freedom, but it's always tied to the pole. We don't have any freedom. Nature forces us to eat. Nature forces us to sleep. Nature forces us to work. All these things we have no choice about. It's all nature doing it. We think we have the freedom. Then we engage a certain arrogance and declare, I do it. What did you do today? I ate. No. Nature forced you to eat. I thought, I created. No. Nature gave you that. You had an inner urge to do it. Where did it come from? Please declare it as it is, as its authority is, and find out where does it come from. It comes from nature itself. It means God harnessing his forces and graces. So God does everything. If we know the trick about it, when a problem arises, like taking a telephone call, we say, hello, hello, I see, Lord, it's for you. Isn't it? It's not mine. I don't have to deal with it. But because I feel I have to assert and deal with it, therein is the problem. That's the arrogance of man, winding up in warfare. Starting off with small squabbles. Ownership, this is mine, that's yours. I'll defend mine to the last. We didn't have any choice about the shape of nose we were born with. So you say, why do you grow a beard? No, all men grow beards. You need to ask men who shave, why did you shave? Don't ask me why I grew a beard. Not this on Tuesday. Well, nature forces it. I didn't grow the beard. I didn't consciously sit down today and say, okay, facial hair, 1 inch today. The growth is like that. It's all nature. There's nothing I can do to flowers. If I want a nice garden, I can't take the head of the flower and say, please, please, today 2 inches growth, pull. Growth occurs from inside. It's all nature's forces. But man declares it's all mine. So there it is. Kartaham iti manyati. Kartaham iti. I am the doer. Thus man thinks. So that's the difficulty. Prakrite kriyam manam Gunai karmani sirvasaha. Ahamkara vimurdyatma. Kartiham iti manyate. That's a very significant statement. Karta ham iti manyate. Thinking I am the doer, I go and do. And that's the difficulty. So how to root that out is very simple. Very simple, but requires practice. You have to be convinced we don't have the freedom. There is a certain element in us that desires to have a freedom, but we'll only get that by overriding nature's forces. We have the capacity to do it. No other creature has the capacity to do it. Only man has that capacity to override nature itself, taking advantage of forces, controlling nature internally and externally in all the dimensions, psychologically, physically, in every area. Man has only got a partial truth by saying, I did this. It's only partially true. Because it's partially true, we don't disturb a man's partial truth. But it's not the whole thing. Only two dimensions are there. The relative dimension of the changing forces, which we call gunas, responsible for everything, and the changeless that transcends it. We have to aim for the changeless. In that way we root out the ego. So karma action is inherent in nature, which is constituted of these three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas. The ignorant man is incapable of distinguishing between the action-ridden nature and the actionless self. And as an example, see, when an onion is peeled, continually all skin goes away and no substance is left. When you start peeling away all the things, we find there's nothing there actually. So in the same thing, if you analyze the ego, it's found to be a non-entity. It's not actually there. It's only our assertion, our false ownership. This is mine, I did this. You take a more realistic position and truthfully understand it all belongs to these three evolutionary forces, the gunas. Then how about an enlightened man or woman? The elucidation comes. Tattva-vid, it's a beautiful term. Tattva-vid means spiritual, to spiritual effort. To mahabhayo guna karma vibhayoga. Guna gunesha vartantan iti matta na sajati. The knower of truth, tattva-vid, the spiritual aspirant who knows the truth. The technical term, tattva-vid. But Almighty armed this one intuitive into the nature of, that means intuitive, the knower of truth, not just intuitive, the knower of truth, into the nature of this guna and karma, knows that the gunas as senses merely abide with the gunas as objects, does not become entangled. These three evolutionary forces are there, and we become entangled. And where do we sit? Here, I. Not knowing that these are the things that are working and acting. This becomes entangled. This, I am lazy. I am enlightened and peaceful. I am active and hard worker and a world achiever. I'm successful. My achievement, all like that. So we have to now say, let's put this here instead. And say, oh, I see, all of this is rotating. What becomes of this? Nothing, it's not existent, it doesn't exist. I exist here. What is I? That is called a self. That is the Atman. Standing here, I see all of this is the active portion, not me. So, what we see as the objects and what we have as the sense organs are exactly the same material. The eyeball is also made from these three gunas. Even internally, psychologically, all the different components and arrangements there are all to do with the three gunas. What is the art there of noticing? The art is to stand outside and see, even psychologically, what is the arrangement at any given time. What is on the stage of the mind at this current time? Is it egoistic? Is it there for the generosity of all? Is it there with the spirit of service? Is love in it? Or is it self-defense and hatred and fear? When we notice it, we can correct it. It's easy to see. See, fear is something we often live with and don't register. At any given moment, we see how I see. And it can be very small things. See? Supposing now I imagine. You may not think it, but there's a little shyness in me. So when I go off, I can now sit and think, oh, in South Africa, what will happen? There'll be a huge audience. What will they think of me? And so all this I could go through. Then what will I see? I'll see a fear developing here. I have to change it, isn't it? Instead of taking that approach, I'll say, Lord, you've given me this. You see, there's a mythological thing in Christianity, Chrysostom. Chrysostom, the man with the golden mouth. There's a story like that. Anyway, John Chrysostom was the man with the golden voice, golden mouth. So Vivekananda came across the same thing. So he had to appear on a stage, never spoken in public before. Most dynamic speaker ever, but never spoke. But he had conviction. But even he, you see, sitting on a world stage, and he would have registered, if I say something now that is out of place, all these people in this hall will take it. It's not just them, the whole press will take it, the whole Western world will take it, India will understand it, that I said something silly. So he sat on the stage. Whenever he was called, he says, not just yet. Until he was the only speaker left, couldn't do anything. Then he gives a secret to his formula. He stood up there, even he had to be urged by his people next to him, come on, it's you. Then he stood there, and his whole character changed, because what he thought was, here I am. This is not my mouth, this is not my speech, this is not my mind. The Mother Saraswati, goddess of all learning and knowledge, stands behind me. Always has. Because of her, I am standing here. When I open my mouth, it will be her words that come. With that conviction, he spoke. Not only that, but he had an attitude toward his audience. So when he looked out there, he didn't see individual heads and arms and so on, people who would judge and criticize. He looked out and only saw, here is my human fellowship. These are people. On the human level, everyone is struggling. Everyone is struggling for their freedom. They're not getting it. Now all these people, what is their true nature? Their true nature is none other but God. God struggling to be God. God struggling to take off the illusion, the magic. What is the magic? Magic itself is not real. Only the magician is real. So seeing that, he spoke first words. Sisters and brothers of America, lining his divine will up, the words themselves anybody can say. But the impact of those few words made the entire audience stand up. 7,000 people, stand up. Standing ovation. That's all he said, sisters and brothers of America. Other people addressed, ladies and gentlemen. He said, sisters and brothers of America. I think he gave a very short speech. But such a lionized speech and impression he gave. The whole press took it. They said they saved the best till last. The best speaker by far was this strange man. They thought sometimes the press thought he was French. You see, French name, Vivekananda. So they call it Vivekananda. Vive. And that, from there on, he operated with the sheer confidence that this is not my work, this is God's work. And I'm doing it for the good of humanity. We can, for convenience sake, divide it in twofold. We can say humanity in the Western world suffering psychologically, spiritually impoverished. The people in the East, where I come from, India, he was thinking they need upliftment, physical upliftment, even psychological upliftment. Anybody who is oppressed for over 1,000 years will require psychological upliftment. They require some inner confidence. Same thing in Africa. I was speaking to people in Malawi. And Malawi is a typical African country. It means the potholes in the road. So you go from maybe a nice hotel, a tourist will go from a nice hotel to the airport through a series of potholes. And the tourists will say, oh, how quaint. And the Africans will say, yes, this is Africa. Accept it. Accept substandard standards because it's Africa. I said to a group of people, you know what? The minute you say we can do anything because we're African is the day your whole country will change. We can do anything, why? Because we're African. Not make an excuse. Things are substandard, why? Because we're African. No, turn it around. So in that way, we have to assert. Now, the ego gives us an element of that assertion. So far so good, but it's only a partial truth. It is a starting point that enables us to make a choice. What is that choice? We don't have to be subject. We don't have to be forced by nature's forces. We can transcend them. We can master them. We don't have to be a slave to the whole of nature. Mastery of nature is spirituality. So, all of that action belongs to the guna, belongs to nature, and the objects and the things that see them, all of those are the same thing. It's all just the gunas, same thing. But you are not that. So I often tell people, when we do a personality course, I tell them, you see, the key to this whole thing is in the word personality. Persona means a mask. Now, if you take a mask, like they did in the ancient Greek dramas, because they didn't have lighting, proper lighting, and so on and so forth, so they just had the seats arranged, stone seats arranged like that, and a stage in front, at a vast distance away. So how do you know if a person is happy? How do you know if a person is portraying sadness? You have to put a mask. A mask with a big smile and eyes uplifted like that. Oh yeah, we understand it's happiness. So all of these emotions were conveyed through masks. But what is the true entity? It must be something behind the mask. As soon as you say mask, it means something sits behind. What is our point of view? I am the personality. It elevates you to an arrogant position. That's difficult. Without the true wisdom of saying, I am that behind the mask, I operate through the mask. I can change the mask, I can use the mask, I can throw the mask away. It's useful to retain the mask. Without that persona, that mask, I can't do anything. It's my adapter that I can use to deal with the world. But I have to understand the distinction. So with that in mind, Prakrita guna samutaha, those deluded by the gunas of Prakriti get attached to the functions of the gunas. The man of perfect knowledge, on the other hand, versus imperfect knowledge, akritsna vidaha, perfect, imperfect knowledge, should not unsettle the mediocre whose knowledge is imperfect. Respected person, say, okay, because, why? Because if a man is lazy, please encourage them to be active. Never mind about spirituality. At least that much is better. Then when a person is dissatisfied, I'm busy being busy, I'm doing everything, I'm not getting anywhere. Normally in midlife, people ask the question, oh, I'm not going anywhere. See, before that, people have certain goals. They're jumping from here to there. What will I do? Make my studies successful. Then what? Then maybe get married. Then what? Then maybe have children. Then what? Find a career. Then what? By the age of 30, 40, people run out of ideas. Then what? What will you do? You have to reassess. Called midlife crisis. Yeah. So, how do we cope with it? Mayi sarvani karmani, surrendering all actions in me, mayi in me, sarvani all karmani actions. Sannyasa is necessary, renouncing all actions. In me, to me, with your thoughts resting on the self. freed from hope and selfishness, and cured of mental fever. Really beautiful statement. Mental fever. Free from ownership also, and free from mental fever. Vigataj varaha. Vigataj varaha. Mental fever. Free from mental fever. Engage in battle. Life is characterized as a battle. So what should you do? Work quietly. Forget about the mental fever. Where does the mental fever come from? Hope. And where does the hope come from? Selfishness, self-centeredness. I want to achieve something. For who? For me. Take off all anxiety. If you take all anxiety away, you take all fear away. Should you not set goals? You can set goals, but focus on your journey. You're climbing a mountain, understand, the top is there. If you are fixated about that repeatedly, you won't enjoy the journey. You won't understand the flora and fauna either side and the comparative views as you go up. You won't get the joy and the glory of it. So set the goal and then put yourself firmly in this mindful presence and work nicely toward that, forgetting about the goal, leaving it there, and understanding here's the joy of action here and now. Given the choice, would we work in a stress-free way with great joy and cheerfulness? Hand gliding is the key. Hand gliding is karma yoga. Take your hands, glide. Don't make it an uphill personal battle. Then, of course, there are aspirants who don't understand that the real doer and owner of everything is none other than Ishvara. When we say these gunas are operating, who is the owner? It's God's glory, God's faculties. None other than that. The true owner is therefore He. That's why surrendering all action to Him. So, those who ever abide in this teaching of mine, full of faith, shraddha, and free from criticism and cavilling and all of those kinds of things, they too are released from actions. So it gives us great encouragement. Have great faith in this. Now faith comes from different areas. The Lord says it, we have faith in it. That's not enough. We have to reason it out. We have to use science and say, yes, these gunas are operating, we can see it. We can even put it in more modern language and understand. The real doer is that. Then we can understand there's something intrinsically within and through and beyond it. Let me understand that. The more I understand that, the closer I get to that, the more calm I feel, the more joy I feel. Through that, each step of the way develops this tremendous shraddha, this tremendous faith. It's not blind faith. That's not what's meant by shraddha. It's full of faith. This teaching of mine. They'll be free from actions. It means free from the binding effect of actions. There are, of course, haughty people who deride the ignorance, credulity and superstition in other people. It's just egoistic arrogance from their behalf. They are proud of their own attainments. And such people hardly ever make any progress. But those who carp at my teaching and act not thereon, deluded in all knowledge and devoid of discrimination, well, know them to be ruined, not by an external force, you are ruined, here's a finger. No, it's self-ruination. I can upgrade or degrade my whole thing. The 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita tells us very clearly. You can uplift the mind or degrade it as you want. It's up to you. Then we come on to spiritual practices conforming to various dispositions. People have different dispositions. A good question comes up. We all have certain dispositions, certain personalities. The cornerstone of such a personality can be a kind of compulsion. So a question is asked, very interestingly, or a point is brought up. Satrasham cheshtate swasya. In accordance, satrasham, with a person's own nature, prakriti, of nature, Jnanavan, even a wise man behaves in conformity with his own nature. Beings follow nature. So what's the point of restraining? If that's my nature, I can never change it. Something that is your nature you can never change. If all of these gunas are your own nature, you can never change them. You can never master them. You'll always be a slave to them. Some plants grow tall, some plants grow slender, some plants have this characteristic, that characteristic. You can never change the two. Even if you declare a plant, a yellow plant outside, to be a red rose flower, and expect it to change, you won't do it. So the yogi disciplines the mind, while the man of action lovingly serves mankind. These are the two avenues presented to us. And I think we may even just leave off there, because it's a whole brand new subject for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we leave that off for the time being. The main theme was the ego, how to overcome the ego, how to root out the ego. So the question was nicely answered there. So we leave some time for questions. That there are two techniques for pranayama. Don't forget, pranayama has nothing to do with breathing. Mm-hmm. Prana is the thing that moves the lungs. It's not the breathing or the breath. Mm-hmm. There's little or nothing to do with breathing or breath. Mm-hmm. So how do we control this prana? And the subtlest version of the prana is thought current. How do we control that energy that manifests itself as the mind? Even worship will do it. So by engaging in worship, loving the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength, you'll find you'll control prana without engaging in any specific technique about it. When you're engaged in deep meditation and the whole of the inner energy comes and gets suspended in a joyful dance, that's a kind of kumbhaka, mm-hmm. a holding of the breath. Mm-hmm. That comes by itself, unasked. Now, the whole benefit of pranayama as a preliminary technique to meditation is you need to use some preliminary means, the mind being normally in a feverish condition, in a turbulent condition, other some techniques in a preliminary way to make the mind easier for concentration, meditation and so on. Yes, a number of techniques can be used. Repeating a mantra lovingly, sportingly, delightfully is a technique. You can do that. Then you can accompany it with regular breathing. That will also assist. But these are just preliminaries. They're not ends in themselves. And unless you have proper instruction, you'll think this is the end in itself. How can I realize the self, the highest? Oh, it's easy. Go like this. No, that's not how it works. Several people who were taught various breathing techniques and found themselves in a condition of mental imbalance. Mm-hmm. Because the precondition for practicing pranayama is brahmacharya. Restraining the force that goes toward the genetic disposition of carrying on the species. Put it that way. Mm-hmm. Even the thought of it, the action is nothing. The thought. Mm. Self-control, does that require strength? Tremendous strength. What is strength? It's just a concentrated application of energy in a certain direction. How do we normally find it? All dissipated, uncontrolled, frittered away, useless. A man lives their life in vain, says Krishna, as a result of that. So don't live, a useless life dedicated to self-interest, frittering away energies. That should not be accepted. So therefore these great teachers who come from time to time reverse it. They correct it. They said, you thought that everything was freedom and so on and so forth, and it was fine. So Vivekananda gives a beautiful definition of morality and ethics. Morality, he says, is if something gives you and others strength, that's the highest morality. Anything that weakens you or others is immoral. There's a very good basis to assess any difficult questions to do with morality. Then he says, ethics. The highest ethics will have the least I. The least self-interest will be the highest ethics. So they're very simple definitions, but you'll find them very valid if you look at them properly. So you take any example. So a man decides to sit in Dublin, inject himself with heroin, on the basis that I have the freedom to do it. I'm not harming anybody. You are. You're harming yourself. And society has to support you. And they have to do something special with hard-earned tax, put that in, so that you can enjoy your freedom. That's not moral. See, like that. So you can use it with any situation. Morality and ethics is not judged on rules and regulations, which have no real meaning or purpose, unless you ask the question why. You have to ask the question why. When Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, please ask the question why. Is there a reason why I should do it, or you just said it? If you just said it, I can't easily accept it. I have to please understand why. Upanishads supply the why. That your neighbor is yourself. That's the why of it. When you do this to that person, you're doing it to you. Jesus puts it also in some way. You do this to these, the least of my children, you do it unto me. Gives that. But doesn't really give the detailed understanding behind it. The Upanishads give it. Why should you not do the greatest harm to society? If everything that exists is only this, the argument of the materialist, purely utilitarian. If you say, I don't believe in God, and I don't believe in anything else except this is the life, we exist, I was born, I have to live, I have to die, during the interim, the living part, I'll live it up. Why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I do the greatest harm to people if it serves my purpose? Why do I have to do the greatest good? If I believe that this is all there is, I should do whatever is best for me. But you see, nobody can easily do it. Everybody has some inner conscience which says, intrinsically, that despite the fact that things should be utilitarian, still I draw a borderline somewhere. Still, when I see something happening in the world with increased communication and information accessible now to me, and I see somebody suffering in a far corner of the world, how is it that I feel pinched here? Some inner thing, some inner sensitivity is there. It naturally corresponds to it. And simply saying that this utilitarianism should be there, but it's not there, is not really a good explanation. This utilitarian is not there, and everybody understands this higher entity. Supposing you say, no, I believe in certain moral standards and so on and so forth, because biologically we learned how to cooperate. You see, Vedanta, not denying anything anybody says, agreeing with everybody, says, so far, so good. There's a validity in it. It's not the whole picture, though. There's an inner drive for whatever you have. If I want joy, if I want pleasure, even in the most depraved way, is it not because my nature is bliss? And I'm journeying toward it and misunderstand it. But still, the inner thrust is good. No matter what depraved thing I do, the inner thrust is good. The inner urge for bliss, that's my nature. And therefore I can't change it. Therefore it has to express in some way. Why does gravity make you fall? Why does a pen reach the floor? if it's not because there's an intrinsic desire for unity. We call it gravity. Why do things fly off? Every atom wants to fly off, if it's not because it has an inherent desire for freedom. Why are things resistant if it's not because my inner nature is unchanging? So all of these things are evidence of that unchanging, infinite, and indivisible one, which we call self, Atman, or what religion calls God. You can't be an Olympic sprinter overnight. There has to be a program of training. If you think that this training is not as pleasant as the ultimate goal, you'll give up. Impatience will take over. So you have to say, no, this day-to-day training I enjoy. The goal is there, leave it there. But this right now, I have to do this training. And this training I have to find enjoyable and pleasant. And as all training, in the beginning, it doesn't seem enjoyable and pleasant, because it goes against my habit. That's why it's called tapasya. A certain friction is involved. But then afterwards, easy and natural. In the beginning, meditation becomes difficult, a little struggle. Why? Because even then, there's a certain element, I have to do something to get something. So initially, I do it because I see I have to do it. After a small while, I do it because I like to do it. I love to do it. Same thing in devotion. It's like if you have a relative, you heard about a relative who happens to live in Australia. So you think, I'll make contact. How will I do it? I'll write a letter. Then another letter comes back. By the way, here's my email address. Okay, now I make some email correspondence. I still have no idea, what does this person look like? Are they good? Are they bad? And so on and so forth. Some uncle there in Australia. Then we get corresponding. Through that correspondence, I get to know the person more. We have a chuckle about certain things and so on. Then I decide, you know what? I think I have the resources and so on and so forth. I can go and visit him. So I purchase a ticket and off I go. Even on the airplane, I have no idea what this person is like. Then I meet this person face to face. Then I decide, I like this person. It'd be a terrible thing for us to be so far apart. I'll get a job in Australia. Then I'll see that person every day. Same thing with God. The first thing is, there's some distant abstract thing somewhere. The next thing is, I think I'll get in touch. The next thing, I get an inner response. No, there's a regular way of keeping contact. We can start that process. Then I decide, I want to see, I have an urge, I want to see God face to face, I want that vision. Then you have the vision. Then the next thing is, how can I sustain that vision? So that's all spiritual progress. And since most of us are orientated toward a relationship which is orientated toward God, personal God, we have to understand that process. What do the great mystics enjoy? They enjoyed continuous company. Well, I kept company with God continuously. In the beginning, I wasn't sure if I wanted to write or not. Then at the end, I wonder why I didn't do it sooner. The same process. Exactly the same process. So yes, Karma Yoga, you can get that book. Okay. Karma Yoga. You see, even you can bring it up as a particular study subject if you want. Since we're studying Karma Yoga itself. Yeah. But where will he get his ideas on Karma Yoga? Here. He won't say anything different from here, that's all. See, everything has to come back to Shastra.
Sure.
And it doesn't stop at the Gita. Gita has to go back to the Upanishads. This Gita is as beautiful as it says in the Gita Dhyanam in the beginning. It's like a beautiful assembly. See, it's like Krishna milking the cow, which are the Upanishads, and here's the essence of it. Only curiously enough, one thing it doesn't directly address is what we discussed yesterday, 3 states of consciousness. So we'll discuss that separately. But otherwise, for the normal, see, this is for the normal working man. Everybody, as far as we know, more or less, is a karma yogi. Or has the capacity to be a karma yogi, put it that way. Because everybody is engaged in karma. You can't avoid it. Nature forces you toward it. So when we first met, what do you do? He said, I sit. Sitting is that an Olympic sport? Is that an activity? Well, most people are forced to engage in an activity to gain some income. That being the case, why don't you transfer it, translate it and use it as something that is stress-free? Something that will give you joy. Why don't you have what I call the art of work as a work of art? The joy of work. The art of work as a work of art. It's necessary.
The method that you explained it, though, like I've already said, many people, when they expand upon the Bhagavad Gita, they talk about compassion, they talk about high concepts which don't ring true to many simple working people. And I think the way that you explained it, that there is benefit to a person, what you give comes back to you, etc., and in a much more eloquent way you put it, that would resonate with people much more. And that, from my limited perspective...
But that's why this is here.
Yeah.
Krishna speaking to the working man forever. He's saying, instead of forming a union for your rights, please study this. Get some joy in work. Get the maximum benefit from work, but for you and others. Make it all-inclusive, for the welfare of all. That means it includes me, includes everybody. Why? It's nature's way. Because of chakra, that wheel. A wheel is constructed in such a way and becomes a symbol, even in Buddhism, because of the interconnected symbolism of it. The hub is connected to the rim is connected to the hub. Each spoke is connected to the other. So the whole thing is integral. And life is like that. You do something here, it affects the whole thing. You go like this in a pond. Why should it be like that? Because we're dealing with a limited universe. The whole universe is limited. Anything that has limitation will come back on itself. Isn't it? The law of nature is constant. You can't add to it or take away with it. If you go like this in a pond, the ripple will eventually be felt at the far end and come back to you again. You throw a stone in a pond, ripples go out, and they come back. You can't avoid it. So you have to be wise enough to know that, to understand that. You might start off from a utilitarian point of view, say, I benefit from this, that's fine. It's not a bad starting point. But then you'll have to understand, I see, even if I want it to come back to me, it's self-centeredness. So therefore, I have to elevate that formula a little bit more, make it for the benefit of everybody.